I've never liked waiting for buses at night. There's something about standing under those weak, flickering streetlights with the roads empty and quiet that makes the world feel wrong. Like you're not supposed to be there. But back when I worked late shifts at the diner, I didn't have a choice. The last bus ran at 12:30 a.m., and the stop was 2 blocks from the diner, tucked between a laundromat and a shuttered liquor store. It wasn't a bad neighborhood, but it wasn't exactly friendly either. Half the lights along the street were broken, and the only company I usually had was the occasional stray cat rifling through a trash bin. Most nights, I was alone, which was fine. I'd sit on the cold bench, clutching my backpack, waiting for the headlights of the bus to appear down the road. But one night in early October, I wasn't alone. He was standing at the far end of the shelter. I noticed him as soon as I walked up. He wasn't sitting, just standing stiffly facing the street. His coat was long and tattered, the kind of thing you'd see draped over a scarecrow. His shoes were scuffed, almost falling apart, and his hands hung awkwardly at his sides. "Hey," I said, nodding, just to break the silence. He didn't move, didn't nod back, didn't even turn his head. He just stood there, staring out at the empty road. I shrugged it off and sat down. Weird people hung around bus stops all the time, especially late at night. Maybe he was just another drifter, but the longer I sat, the stranger it felt. He didn't shuffle, didn't adjust his weight, didn't cough or scratch or fidget. He stood perfectly still, like a statue. 10 minutes passed. No bus yet. I tried not to glance at him, but my eyes kept flicking over. His head was tilted slightly downward, as if he were looking at the asphalt, but his body faced straight ahead. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Figures. When the bus finally arrived, I climbed aboard quickly. He didn't move. Didn't follow. Just kept standing there, staring at the road. I didn't think much of it until the next night, same shift, same time. I walked up to the stop, and there he was again. Same coat, same shoes, same posture. This time my stomach sank. It's a big city. People don't just linger in the exact same spot, 2 nights in a row at the exact same time, not without reason. "Bus'll be here soon," I said, trying to sound casual. No response. I moved to the opposite side of the shelter, keeping him in the corner of my vision. My nerves were buzzing. When the bus arrived, I got on quickly. But again, he didn't. He just stood there, watching the road, and that's how it went. Night after night. Every time I worked the late shift, he was there, always in the same spot, always at the same time. He never got on the bus, never spoke, never moved apart from the faint tilt of his head. I told coworkers about him. Most laughed it off. Probably just some weirdo, they said. Maybe homeless, maybe waiting for someone. But that didn't explain the stillness, or the way he never left. I thought about reporting him, but what would I even say? There's a guy standing at the bus stop too often? The cops would laugh me out of the station, so I tried to ignore him. But ignoring something is hard when you can feel its eyes on you even when you're not looking. The worst night came in late October. The wind was sharp, carrying dead leaves across the street. I was shivering as I walked to the stop, hugging my jacket tighter. He was there, of course, but this time, his head wasn't tilted down. He was looking at me, full on, unblinking, pale face catching the weak glow of the streetlight. His eyes, I can't describe them properly. They weren't glowing or anything supernatural, but they were too wide, too still, like someone had painted them on. I froze mid-step. For the first time, I realized he wasn't just waiting. He was waiting for me. My stomach flipped. I wanted to turn and run, but my legs carried me forward instead. I sat on the bench, pulling out my phone, pretending to scroll. I could feel his stare drilling into me. The bus took forever that night. When it finally arrived, I scrambled aboard, nearly tripping on the steps. I glanced back once through the window. He was still watching me. I started dreading work. Not the shifts, not the customers, not the hours, just the walk to that bus stop. Some nights I tried taking side streets, hoping to avoid him. But no matter what, when I arrived at the stop, he was already there. Always in the same place, like he'd been waiting the whole time. One night I left work early, around 10:15. Surely he wouldn't be there that early, but he was, same spot, same posture. That was the night I noticed something else. The bus came, headlights sweeping across the shelter, casting long shadows. Mine stretched across the ground, elongated by the light. His didn't. I blinked. Looked again. Nothing, no shadow, just empty pavement where his should have been. I didn't take the bus home that night. I ran, straight down the street, not stopping until I reached my apartment. I called out of work the next day, and the day after. I couldn't bring myself to go near that stop. Finally, I convinced myself it had to be my imagination. Lack of sleep, stress, paranoia. I was seeing things that weren't there. So the next week I went back. He was gone. Relief washed over me. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe he'd moved on. But when the bus pulled up, I glanced at the windows. And there he was, sitting inside in the back row, coat draped around him like before. His head turned slowly, deliberately, to look at me through the glass. The bus pulled away. My legs refused to move. He doesn't stand at the bus stop anymore. Now, he rides the bus, and I don't take it anymore. But sometimes, when I pass one on the street, I can see him through the window, watching, always watching. When I moved into my new apartment last spring, I wasn't expecting much. It was cheap, small, and a little rough around the edges, but it was mine. The landlord made me sign a thick stack of papers, muttering something about previous issues with tenants, but reassuring me everything had been taken care of. I didn't ask questions. I was just happy to finally have a place of my own. The apartment wasn't furnished except for one thing. In the closet, shoved in the corner under a pile of dusty blankets, was an old black rotary phone. It looked like it belonged in a museum, heavy and scratched, its cord tangled like a nest of snakes. I remember laughing when I saw it. Who even used rotary phones anymore? I left it there, thinking maybe I'd toss it out with the trash later. For the first few weeks, life was normal. I worked my shifts, came home, ate cheap takeout, scrolled through my phone, and crashed. The apartment was quiet, almost too quiet at times, but I liked it that way. Until the phone rang. It was 3:11 a.m. The sound jolted me out of a dead sleep. That harsh, metallic burring that felt like it came straight out of a 1970s horror movie. At first, I thought it was my cell. But when I grabbed it from the nightstand, the screen was dark. The ringing kept going. I followed the sound, heart thudding in my chest, until I realized it was coming from the closet. The rotary phone, but it wasn't plugged in. I stood there frozen, staring at it as it rang and rang. Finally, after what felt like forever, it stopped. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Dreams bleed into reality all the time, right? Maybe I'd been half asleep, maybe some other sound had woken me. But the following night, at exactly 3:11, it rang again. This time, I picked it up. The line was filled with static. Hissing like a storm was raging on the other end. Then through the static came a voice, faint, hollow, whispering, "Why did you take my place?" I slammed the phone down so hard it echoed through the room. My skin crawled. I should have thrown it out right then, but I didn't. Instead, I shoved it back into the closet, buried under the blankets. Out of sight, out of mind. That night it rang again. I didn't answer. The night after that, it rang again. I unplugged every device in my apartment, convinced some weird wiring was causing it. Still, at 3:11, the ringing started, and it didn't stop until I touched it. By the end of the week, I was unraveling. I barely slept, waiting each night for the inevitable sound. My coworkers noticed the bags under my eyes, the way I jumped at every noise. I lied, said I was having trouble sleeping. But the truth was worse. One night, desperate, I stayed at a friend's place across town. I slept soundly, no disturbances. Relief washed over me. Maybe it was the apartment itself, some weird acoustics, some trick. But when I returned the next morning, the phone was sitting in the middle of the living room floor. I never moved it there. The ringing got worse, louder, longer. I started covering my ears with pillows, blasting music, anything to drown it out. But somehow I could still hear it, clear, sharp, piercing. Finally, I snapped. I grabbed the phone, stormed outside, and smashed it against the concrete. Once, twice, over and over until it cracked into pieces, wires spilling out like guts. I left the wreckage by the dumpster, breathing heavily, feeling a strange mixture of fear and triumph. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks until 3:11 a.m. Burring. The sound echoed through the walls. I stumbled into the living room, trembling. The phone was back, sitting neatly on the coffee table, whole again as if I'd never touched it. I couldn't take it anymore. I called my landlord, demanding answers. At first he was dismissive, muttering about old wiring, but when I pressed him, his tone shifted. You found the phone, didn't you?" he asked. "Yes," I snapped. "Why is it here? Why does it keep ringing?" Silence on the other end. Then, "You shouldn't have answered it." The line went dead. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat in the corner of the room with a kitchen knife clutched in my hand, watching the phone. When 3:11 came, it rang. Louder than ever, I didn't answer, but the voice came anyway, from the walls, from the floor, from the air itself. "Why did you take my place?" The walls shook. The lights flickered. My ears rang with the sound of static. I screamed, covering my head, begging it to stop, and then silence. The phone hasn't rung since, but it sits there on the table, waiting. Sometimes, when I walk by, I swear I hear it buzzing faintly, like it's holding its breath. I don't dare touch it, but I know one night soon it'll ring again, and when it does, I don't think I'll have the strength not to answer. I've never been afraid of mirrors. They've always just been part of life, something you glance at before leaving the house, something you don't even think about when brushing your teeth. I never bought into the creepy urban legends, say Bloody Mary 3 times or don't look into a mirror after midnight. That stuff was for kids, but now, I can't look at a mirror without feeling my stomach twist, because sometimes it doesn't look back the way it should. It started small, almost laughable. One night after a long shift, I was brushing my teeth. My bathroom light had this faint flicker to it, nothing unusual in an old apartment. As I leaned over the sink, I glanced up at the mirror. For a second, just a fraction of a second, I thought my reflection moved a little slower than me. I blinked, shook it off, told myself I was tired, but the thought lodged itself in my brain. Over the next week, it happened again. Not every night, not even predictably, but every so often I'd catch it. I'd set my toothbrush down, but in the mirror, my reflection's hand lingered an extra beat. Or I'd turn to grab a towel, and in the glass, my reflection seemed to turn its head just a fraction too late. It was subtle enough to doubt myself. But once you start noticing something like that, you can't unsee it. One night, I decided to test it. I stood in front of the mirror for nearly 20 minutes, moving my hands, tilting my head, blinking rapidly. Anything to catch my reflection slipping. But it didn't. It mimicked me perfectly, every little motion. Finally, exhausted and annoyed at myself for being paranoid, I turned away. That's when I saw it, out of the corner of my eye. Just before I stepped out of the bathroom, my reflection didn't turn with me, it stayed facing forward, staring. I didn't sleep that night. Sat on the couch, lights on, every sound in the apartment magnified. I told myself it was stress, lack of rest, my brain playing tricks on me. I tried to convince myself, but the more I thought about it, the worse it got. Mirrors are supposed to be perfect copies. No delay, no difference. If mine wasn't, what was I looking at? I covered the bathroom mirror the next day with an old sheet. It felt stupid, but it gave me some relief. Out of sight, out of mind. That worked for about 3 days. On the 4th night, I woke up to a soft scraping sound, like fingernails against glass. It was coming from the bathroom. Heart pounding, I forced myself to look. The sheet I'd taped over the mirror was moving, pressing outward like something behind it was pushing, dragging its fingers across the glass. I didn't go in. I shut the door and sat awake until morning. When I finally gathered the courage to check, the sheet was perfectly still, but the tape had been torn just slightly, as if something had tried to pull it down. After that, I couldn't avoid it anymore. Every reflective surface felt wrong. The dark screen of my TV, the glossy window at night, even the shine of my phone when it caught my face. I kept thinking I saw eyes that lingered too long, smiles that curled too wide. One evening, I grabbed every mirror in the apartment, bathroom, bedroom, even the little one in the hallway, and stuffed them in a box. I hauled it to the dumpster, feeling like an idiot but desperate for peace. That night I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. But when I woke up the next morning, the bathroom mirror was back, hung neatly in place, as if it had never been removed. I tried calling my landlord, asking if maybe maintenance had come in without telling me. He sounded confused, said no one had entered. When I pressed further, he got uncomfortable, told me maybe I should see a doctor if I was having hallucinations. I wanted to argue, but deep down I wondered if he was right. Maybe I was losing it still. When night fell, I couldn't bring myself to step into the bathroom. It escalated fast after that. One night I woke up thirsty and stumbled toward the kitchen. As I passed the hallway, I froze. The bathroom door was cracked open and the mirror inside glowed faintly in the dark. Not reflecting the room, not reflecting me, but showing something else. A hallway. Not my hallway. It stretched impossibly far, dimly lit, walls lined with doors that had no handles. And in the distance, something moved. Slowly, steadily, it walked closer. Though it seemed like no matter how far it traveled, it stayed just out of focus. I slammed the door shut and shoved a chair against it, hard in my throat. After that, I stopped going near the bathroom at night. I used the kitchen sink to brush my teeth. I avoided reflective surfaces as much as possible, but avoidance only goes so far, because eventually, the reflection stopped waiting for the mirror. The first time it happened, I was sitting on the couch scrolling my phone. Out of nowhere, I felt that creeping sensation, the one where you know someone's watching you. I glanced up, across the room in the dark screen of the TV. I saw my reflection, except I wasn't smiling. It was, teeth bared wide and unnatural, stretching too far. I dropped my phone and scrambled out of the apartment. Spending the night in my car, I thought about moving. God, I wanted to move, but money was tight. I couldn't afford another place, so I stayed. That was my mistake. Because the thing in the mirror, it didn't want me gone. It wanted me to notice. The last night, the night I knew I couldn't stay any longer, was the worst. I was lying in bed, eyes half shut, when I heard it. A faint chuckle. Low, wet, coming from the corner of the room. I sat up. There, standing in the full-length mirror across from my bed, was my reflection, but I wasn't moving. It was. It tilted its head slowly, the way a predator sizes up prey. Its grin spread wider and wider until the corners of its mouth tore open, stretching into something inhuman. Then it stepped forward. Not toward me. Out of the mirror. I don't remember running. I don't remember leaving. I just remember waking up outside barefoot, trembling on the cold pavement. My apartment lights were still on. The bathroom window was glowing faintly like something was moving inside. I never went back. I grabbed what little I could the next morning, when the sun was high and the world felt safe again. Clothes, documents, essentials. I didn't look at the mirrors. I didn't want to know if they were watching. Now every time I catch my reflection, in a shop window, a phone screen, a puddle on the street, I can't help but wonder, is it me looking back? Or is it still waiting?